I'm Richard.
And I'm Will.
And together we're
The Irreverent Nerds. Bum, bum, bum.
Nerds. We are here. And where are we? I'm really tired. Where are we?
We're at the Grand Theater live. No, we're not live. Well, we are live, but we're not live for you. We're live for us.
Yes.
Recording at the theater. We just got out from seeing The Boy and the Heron.
That's right.
Which may or may not be Miyazaki's last film. We'll see.
Yeah, he's 83 years old?
I think he's going to keep working as long as he has breath.
I have a feeling he will. Yeah, his so-called retirements have not lasted. Although he has slowed down, which is why this film took 7 years to make, apparently. But hey, we're not wanting to stay out too late because we actually, just due to scheduling, we had to watch this literally on Tuesday night. So we're dropping the episode in a couple hours, quite literally. So we're gonna jump right into this. So The Boy and the Heron. Synopsis. So in Japanese, this is Kimitachi wa do ikiru ka, which translates literally, how do you live? This is a 2023 Japanese animated fantasy film written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki, produced by Studio Ghibli. The Japanese title references the 1937 novel of the same name by Genzaburo Yoshino, which appears in the film, but the film has an original story that is not connected to the novel.
Oh.
So maybe inspired by, loosely, perhaps. The Japanese voice cast includes Soma Santoki, Masaki Suda, Ko Shibisaki, Amyon, Yoshino Komura, Takuya Kimura, Kaoru Kobayashi, and Shinobu Otaki. As always, apologies for murdering the Japanese pronunciation. This is described as a big, fantastical film. It follows a boy named Mahito Maki Santoki during the Pacific War who discovers an abandoned tower in his new town after his mother's death and enters a fantastical world with a talking gray heron. And I'm going to see if I can find a list of the English dub cast, because that is what we watched. We watched the English dub, voiced as are most Miyazaki films by a stellar, and I truly mean that, a stellar voice cast. I mean, we got Christian Bale,
Mark Hamill.
Here we go, English. So, Mahito Maki was played in the English dub by Luca Padovan. I don't recognize that name, so he must be a fairly young actor. The Gray Heron, which I did not pick up in this at all, so kudos to you, sir. I could not recognize your voice. He was played by Robert Pattinson, which would not have guessed that.
Didn't he play the Batman?
Yeah, the new Batman, the newest Batman.
I thought so.
Yeah, and of course, somewhat more famously, Edward from the Twilight series. Lady Himi was played by Karen Fukuhara. Natsuko was played by Gemma Chan, and Shoichi Maki was played by Christian Bale, who's the first voice I recognize. I mean, he has a very distinctive voice, so it's hard to miss. However, Mark Hamill was a little harder to recognize. I knew I could place the voice. I was like, I know I've heard this voice before, but he plays the Grand Uncle, who's a key figure more in the second half of the film. Kiriko is played by Florence Pugh, which, again, I would not have guessed. She did a good job with the voice. You know, that's often a sign, not always, but that can be a sign of a talented voice actor, and that you're able to make your voice almost unrecognizable while still inhabiting the pathos of that character and not doing it over the top. Like, that's a challenge. The Noble Pelican, which I did recognize this voice, was played by Willem Dafoe. Also, the Parakeet King was played by Dave Bautista, who has a pretty distinctive voice as well. He made no attempt to talk as anything other than himself. So, if you hear some Drax in there, Uzumi, or sorry, you were gonna say something?
I can't believe I didn't realize it was Dave Bautista.
Yeah. Well, I recognize it pretty quickly. But yeah, I'm surprised though that I missed Mark Hamill until towards the end of the movie. I was like, oh, it's Mark Hamill. Uzumi was played by Denise Pickering. Utako, played by Barbara Rosenblatt. Eriku, played by Melora Harte. Akiro, maid number 4, played by Barbara Goodson. And one that they don't mention in this credits is Debbie Berry, who plays some characters, but quite a few, and extra voices and things. And she is a prolific voice actor. You know, if you look at her credits, they're very long. One of the most recognizable being Jimmy Neutron. But she's like a voice actor in the truest sense of the word. Like, she does that for a living. Whereas many of these other actors, that's just secondary work for them.
Right.
Although Mark Hamill does quite a bit himself. But he is obviously in live action as well. So, that is the cast. I did want to note, actually, one more thing here about the release of The Boy and the Heron. So it was theatrically released first in Japan on July 14th of this year by Toho. It was screened in both regular theaters and in IMAX, which was true here as well, although I think they only had the first weekend IMAX showings here. The release of the film was noted for its intentional absence of any promotion, with Ghibli choosing not to release any trailers, images, synopses, or casting details of the film in advance of its Japanese premiere, with the exception of a single poster. The film received critical acclaim and has grossed over $112 million worldwide. It was nominated for many awards, including Golden Globe Award nominations for Best Animated Feature and Best Original Score. And according, speaking of, like, I don't know if it made its budget back, but according to Suzuki, it is the most expensive film ever produced in Japan.
Wow.
It took 7 years to make, and the animation was hand-drawn. You do see a little bit of CGI, you can tell in certain scenes, but obviously the main characters all hand-drawn, which is a Miyazaki staple. So, on to the plot. In 1943, during the Pacific War, 12-year-old Mahito Maki's mother, Hisako, is killed in a hospital fire in Tokyo. Mahito's father, Shoichi, an air munitions factory owner, remarries his late wife's younger sister, Natsuko. They evacuate to her estate in the countryside, attended by several old maids. Mahito is indifferent to the affection of the pregnant Natsuko. A gray heron, which behaves outlandishly, leads Mahito to a derelict tower sealed after its architect, Natsuko's eccentric granduncle, disappeared within. Mahito tussles with other children after school, then purposely gashes his own head with a rock before returning home. Shoichi, assuming Mahito was victimized, excuses him from school. The heron, now speaking, goads the convalescent Mahito with promises of finding his lost mother. Though suspicious, Mahito is nearly taken by a supernatural swarm of toads. Natsuko saves him with a whistling arrow, inspiring Mahito to craft his own bow and arrow. The arrow is magically imbued with true aim after fletching with the heron's feather. Meanwhile, Mahito finds a copy of How Do You Live, bequeathed from his mother. The original novel. Yeah, so that's where that comes in. Natsuko, ill and estranged by Mahito's coldness, disappears from her sickbed. Leading one of the searching maids, Kiriko, into the tower, Mahito is deceived by an imitation of his mother made by the heron. Affronted, he pierces the heron's beak with his arrow, transforming the heron into a diminutive, flightless birdman. A wizard appears, ordering the birdman to guide Mahito and Kiriko as all three sink into the floor.
Mahito descends alone into an oceanic world containing artificial objects but little life. He is rescued from attacking pelicans and a forbidding megalithic dolmen by a younger Kiriko, an adept fisherwoman who uses magic. They catch and sell a giant fish to bubble-like spirits called wara wara, which fly to the world above to be reborn. A pyrokinetic young woman, Hime, protects wara wara from predation by pelicans. A dying pelican explains that their species is desperate to survive after being introduced to this world with no other food.
Kiriko mediates peace between Mahito and the Birdman, and Mahito plugs the Birdman's beak, restoring his flight. Hime saves Mahito from anthropomorphic man-eating parakeets and shows him... Yeah, because why not?
Why not? Oh, that was bizarre.
Yeah. And shows him a counterpart of the tower which contains doors to many worlds. They enter a door leading back to Natsuko's estate and are found by Shoichi, who has come to investigate the tower. But Mahito returns through the door to continue his search.
Infiltrating the parakeet's kingdom, Mahito and Hime are repelled by shocks of energy from sentient rock. I don't know why I said rock, it says stone. It doesn't matter. Mahito finds Natsuko in the delivery room, where both are painfully entangled in paper streamers strewn by violent wind, as Natsuko indignantly rebuffs Mahito, which I also found bizarre. In return, he acknowledges her as his mother. Hime incinerates the paper, but all three are worn unconscious by the encounter.
In a dream, Mahito meets the wizard, Natsuko's grand uncle. The wizard, preoccupied by a teetering stack of stone toy blocks representing the world, requests Mahito, possessing the power of his bloodline, to succeed custodianship of the world. Mahito warns that the blocks are infused with malice.
Waking up, Mahito is freed from captivity by the Birdman. They climb the tower to pursue the Parakeet King, who is delivering Hime to the wizard as a political bargaining chip. The king spies Mahito and the Birdman arriving and tails them furtively. The wizard has collected replacement blocks free of malice for Mahito, but Mahito understands that he himself possesses malice embodied by his self-inflicted scar and must first embrace those who love him.
Enraged by the frivolity of the toy blocks, the Parakeet King slices them apart. The world begins to collapse and flood, and Mahito, Hime, and the Birdman escape to the doors, reuniting with Natsuko and young Kiriko. Understanding that Hime is his birth mother, Mahito warns her of her fate, but Hime returns to her own time without regrets. Mahito returns with Natsuko amidst an exodus of animals that revert to zoomorphic forms. The Birdman notices Mahito keeping a stone of power and advises him to eventually forget his experiences. A charm doll, carried by Mahito, transforms back into the old Kiriko. 2 years later, Mahito moves back to Tokyo with Shoichi, Natsuko, and his new half-sibling.
And that is the plot.
Yes, sir. So, what are your first impressions, sir?
Well, I thought that the fire scenes in the very beginning of the film had a very fluid-like animation to them. I'm glad the entire film wasn't like that, but I thought it was very neat, especially for those scenes.
Yeah, I like that effect as well. I guess you'd call that a visual effect, but
yeah,
it seems that one achieved through hand-drawn animation.
The film overall, I liked it. It was... I may have to rewatch it a few times. It's not my favorite Miyazaki film, but I found it bizarre. I kept wondering if there was some sort of Japanese cultural references in the film I didn't understand, like the paper the paper rope surrounding the birthing stone bed of the ant.
Yeah, no, I wondered as well. I assumed there was probably some symbolism in certain places that we just wouldn't get.
Yeah.
Not being Japanese, like.
and maybe it would be less bizarre if I understood the culture. I'm not sure. Or maybe it just is bizarre. I'm not, who knows?
Could be. It'd be interesting to read a review. I suppose we should have looked that up for this, but to read a review from a Japanese critic and see, or a commentator, perhaps.
True.
See what their perspective is on it.
Why are the pelicans zoomorphic, but the parakeets are anthropomorphic?
Good question. Yeah, I don't know. Because they don't really change much when they come back to other than not being able to talk anymore.
Yeah, all the birds turn back into normal birds once they come back into the real world.
Yeah, I think.
Except for the heron. Go ahead.
But anyway, I guess your initial impressions. Do you enjoy it? Like how many nerd ads do you think you give it on first watch?
3.5. I'm not really sure. That might be unfair. Like I said, I'm gonna have to rewatch it. It's after work. I'm tired, so I think that affects my enjoyment of the film. I like the protagonist, Mahito. I didn't understand why he gashed his own head with a rock. Maybe he was trying to get out of school. He didn't want to go back. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was a little unclear, and maybe they left it deliberately vague. But my assumption was either that he wanted to get back at the people that attacked him because he knew his father would not rest until that. So perhaps he hurt himself worse.
That was my initial thought, but then he refused to say who it was.
Yeah, so that is interesting. So was it just malice towards himself? It's not entirely clear. But interesting though. It was interesting, and maybe that's more the maybe in some ways that makes it more interesting. The fact that it's not entirely clear why he did it. Maybe he doesn't even fully understand why he did it.
True.
One thing I was curious in particular is if the heron has any particular significance in Japanese folklore. If that was something like the bird itself, if it represents a particular. Yeah, that I wasn't sure about.
Not that I remember. When we saw the fish saying join us," or whatever they were saying, that did remind me of catfish in Japanese folklore, but although I don't think those were catfish. However, heron, I'm not certain about. I know that a paper crane represents death, but heron man, I don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like the scene where he gets it's different, obviously, but it reminded me a little bit of the scene in Spirited Away, where you have all those paper birds, But in that case, they're like cutting, they're like flying and cutting. They're not, entangling and almost suffocating as they were in this film. But it reminded me of that, like.
Me too.
And I guess you see that with like certain through lines with Miyazaki, like visual through lines in his stories, like the old woman with the wart on the forehead.
Right.
Like that's one that pops up quite a bit, it seems, and even just like a creepy looking old. Well, not exactly creepy, but like ugly old women.
Yeah.
With giant heads.
The interesting thing about them was that they were a lot more cartoony than the other characters, almost suggesting they weren't human, but nothing became of it, so they apparently were human. I suppose that the creators just wanted to have more fun with the elderly characters in their designs.
No, it is interesting, and I think I had heard this leading up to the film, but it was knowing enough about Miyazaki to recognize that this definitely has some autobiographical elements to it.
Really?
Like his father worked for a company that produced elements of Japanese warplanes back during World War II, like not the entire plane, I don't think, but like a part that was important for the plane. So there's some similarities there. So maybe in some ways Mahito is like Miyazaki's imagination of himself. Apparently Miyazaki's family also had to evacuate from their city to the countryside during the war. And the hospital fire, this is according to Wikipedia, by the way, the hospital fire at the beginning of the film evokes personal parallels with Miyazaki's own loss of his mother, who was known for her strong opinions and is believed to have been a source of inspiration for several of the director's female characters. And Mahito's emotional connection with his mother parallels Miyazaki's love for his mother. So yeah, it may be in some ways like as Miyazaki is, coming ever closer to his own death, and seeing that, because death is definitely a primary theme in this film. I think it's fair to say, like, one of the main themes, him dealing with, grief over his mother's death, and maybe not wanting to face that fully, and certainly they deal some with death when he enters the other world as well. Like that remains a theme. But it may be that Miyazaki is like, although he has often drawn on his childhood, like in many of his films, I think. So it's not that was necessarily unique, but
right.
Maybe him making it a little more personal this time around is kind of a sign of like an old man reflecting more as he nears the end of his own life. And making this one more personal than he might have some of his others. As he often puts like a version of himself into the film, but usually not as a young character. Yeah, at least. So that is interesting. But
I wonder if he gashed his head on a rock.
I don't know.
I say that humorously, half seriously.
Well, one thing about the character of Mahito is his resolve. Like he's always standing like straight, hands at his side, balled into fists, the very determined look on his face. Like you see him strike that pose over and over again in the film. So he has a lot of courage and resolve. They don't say exactly how old he is. I was assuming maybe 13, 14, thereabouts, because he has a little bit deeper voice. Like he might have gone through puberty, but he's still not fully grown, kind of thing.
Right.
But they don't say for sure. So, but probably 12 to 14 in that age range, which is very common, I think, for Miyazaki's protagonists tend to be pretty young.
The Wikipedia says 12, but you're right, I don't remember it actually being stated in the film itself, or at least not in the English dub.
I was guessing around there.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. So he's 14 at the end of the film.
That makes sense.
When they're preparing to go back to Tokyo. But yeah, how about, this is interesting, like his dad, like remarrying
the sister?
What?
Yeah.
Well, actually, they don't say that they got married necessarily, but like hooking up with, I guess, the sister very soon after his wife's death. Like it's a little intense.
It could have been an arranged marriage, both of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's a traditional thing of like the sister dies and then the the widower marries the other sister. So like a reverse of the Bible where like the brother marries the widow, like I don't know. I've not heard of that. But yeah, they definitely. You figure it out in the film, but they don't make a big deal about it. Like it's no one seems to be like, oh, that's taboo. That's you don't do that. But yeah,
or maybe it wasn't arranged. Maybe he just they fell in love, grieving over the mother. Who knows?
Yeah, that does happen. Like they would certainly have that connection. Yeah, they don't actually say that they get married. I suppose it's implied to some extent, but not that you have to get married necessarily. But
and obviously, Daddy was seeing the aunt before Mahito met her.
She's already pregnant.
She's already pregnant.
Yeah, obviously. Makes you wonder if he was having an affair with the sister before her sister died. I mean, he's like, don't want to think that, but they don't really give you the timeline unless I missed it. But yeah, a little intense.
Well, I assumed she was still early on in the pregnancy, but then she's like on her...
and she's like, feel it kick. I was like, it's got to be at least 6 months along, if not more.
Wow.
If she's like...
Yeah.
So it's been a bit. So he's had some time to anticipate this. But it depends on also when his father told him, which again, they don't specify, I don't think.
So I guess they hooked up at the funeral.
Maybe so. Again, yeah, a little dark. A little dark. Not unheard of, certainly, in human behavior, but be a little dark there. That they don't really address it directly. The elephant in the room, or the heron in the room. No. Speaking of the heron, what did you think of the heron character?
Bizarre and unexplained, but eventually likable.
Yeah, it kind of has that grumpy old man that becomes likable. That seems to, or that character. Nerds, we would like to hear from you. Yes, you. You can send us a voice message if you go to our Spotify for Podcasters profile. You can get there by going to irreverentnerds.com. There is a message button. You can click on that. You can leave us a voice message. If you do that, we will include it in next week's episode. You can also follow us on social media. Our Instagram handle is @irreverent_nerds. We are on Facebook simply as The Irreverent Nerds. YouTube, The Irreverent Nerds, once again. And that's it. Those are only places where you can find us at the present, beyond, of course, your podcast app. So, if you find us in one of those spots, please feel free to let us know what you think of our episodes, whether you like them, dislike them, you're ambivalent, whatever you want to say, give us your 2 cents. Thank you, nerds. Now back to this week's episode. I feel like gets repeated in different forms in Miyazaki films. This grumpy old man who helps out the protagonist, or grumpy old character. It doesn't have to be a man, but like that, got some rough edges, but ends up helping. Excuse me.
What did you think about the Heron Man?
I like the character, yeah. Like initially he's just more enigmatic and weird. And I wasn't sure where they were going at first when like the man's head starts popping out. I'm like, wait, is this the granduncle? That he, that was my initial thoughts. Is like he had transformed himself into the heron, and maybe they wanted you to think that. I'm not sure, but my thought was like, oh, he's transforming back. That's what I was thinking at first.
And I'm also wondering, when everybody falls into this other world. Some of the characters turn into something else, but then some of the characters stay the same. Like, I don't remember, Kariko? I can't remember. Well, she turns into a little pocket-sized statue, and then morphs out of Mahito's pocket at the end of the film.
Yeah, so apparently she was in the old version. I think you find it in the film that the version of her that he meets came there around the same time as his mother, and apparently was a servant in the house, so either came with his mother, and had been there a while. They do say at one point that his mother, when she entered that world, was there for a year.
Yeah.
So yeah, that seems to track. That made sense to me. Like when she walked back through that door with his mother there at the end, with Mahito's mother. That did make sense. Like, excuse me. But yeah, like, I wasn't sure at first, like, if it was supposed to be like a version of the underworld.
Yeah, I was wondering that too. I mean, the Wara Wara were floating up to be born as humans.
Yeah, so that's more of like, almost more like, the only tradition I can think of off the top of my head, I know in Mormon tradition, I don't know how would be mainstream this teaching is, but I know it is in Mormon teaching that, like the spirits of children are living up in heaven like before they're born, and they come down, not up, but down to the earth.
To be tested.
It's like maybe something akin to that. I don't know if that's an element of Japanese folklore on some level that I just haven't heard of.
It could be. I was wondering that too.
Because, I mean, Miyazaki has shown over the years, like, he doesn't just borrow, which most good storytellers don't just borrow from one folklore tradition or one mythical tradition. They borrow from others as well. So maybe that he got that from, not necessarily from Mormonism, but, I'm sure there's been variations on something like that.
I'm sure.
If you think about it, it's pretty damn weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like to think that it's like, damn, we just made another human. Where'd it come from? Like, you know what I mean? Like, especially before we were as advanced in our understanding of biology and whatnot. It's like, and there's still, even now, like, there's a mystery element to it. It's just like, so yeah, well, why wouldn't there be folklore and myths that had sprung up about that in multiple cultures over the years, over the millennia, I'm not familiar with too many of them, but that would make sense to me. And Miyazaki, of course, putting his own spin on it, as he's want to do with the little floating, I don't even know what you want. I mean, I know what they're called in the film, but like, I don't know what else was it Wara Wara? Yeah,
Wara Wara.
Wara Wara.
Pixar, Disney did a film, I think it's called Soul, where... Yeah, little spirit things get born as humans, too.
Yeah, and I want to say this was already in development prior to that being released, but you never know. There might have been some cross-pollination of ideas there, or inspiration.
Well, maybe they had a similar inspiration source, but I wouldn't think that the two projects ever touched each other. I was just noting a similar idea used in a different film. But yeah, I thought it was the Underworld too. It was really strange. I mean, we had that Golden Gate, and really, if you think about it, I mean, Grand Uncle was like God.
Yeah, a little bit.
And I mean, it definitely had some religious elements. The parakeet pallbearers thought that when they entered into that realm, it was paradise.
Yeah, no, that was interesting. So it's almost like there's worlds within the world.
Yeah.
That Mahito enters, and like he enters it. Well, he goes, and then they had, of course, the story of the tower. Like initially, like this giant rock comes down from space.
Yeah, what's that about, right?
I know, like, okay, well, like, who sent it or where'd it come from? Because, like,
the gods,
I guess. Excuse me. Yeah, I guess that's the implication, or so maybe he rose to the level of a god, with all his learning and experimentation, something like, but maybe he was able to use the power of, maybe that was the stone, like the thing that fell down, and perhaps he was able to use the power of that to create a different world. But you had a lot of, you had connections to a lot of, I don't know if those are all different times, if they were supposed to be parallel realities. I mean, they don't really answer, like, all the different doors, like there were so many different doors, in that hallway, aka a little bit like the Matrix, maybe.
Yeah, and you would think it would be far less doors if it was only doorways to different time periods of his descendants. But no, there were a lot of doors. There were a lot of doors.
They'll tell them where they all went, and obviously they don't feel it necessary to explain it, so leave it up to your imagination.
Yeah. It was probably just a visual, for visual purposes, to make the hallway look impressive and expansive, and but who knows? I got the impression that they were different dimensions, but then towards the end of the film, we have a better understanding that they're doorways into different time periods. But the word worlds is used, so.
Maybe he created more than one, or maybe he just had access to other ones that existed that he didn't necessarily create. But yeah, it is interesting. Side note, not that important, but there was a lot of bird poop in this movie.
Yes, there's a lot of bird poop.
The parakeets lambast quite a few people, but the heron drops a few gifts as well.
Yes, he does. Which would have been a lot more awkward after he became a Birdman. I honestly, if I had done this, I'm just saying, I really loved this part of the film where he's like, "We're not really friends," and then he was like, "Wait, could you
help me with this?
Could you further help me with this?
Could you fix it?
It's irritating.
It's like, I'm going to leave you alone. Oh wait, it's not working right. Can you fix it again? It's like, just shut up.
Yeah, I love that, but I think I would have loved it even more if there would have been a moment where he did drop a deuce and and the Mahito's like, that is disgusting or something.
Question is, when he's in his Birdman form, does he still have a cloaca?
We will never know.
Bombs away.
Does he still drop bird poop, or does he drop man poop?
Birdman poop.
Birdman poop.
Watch out. It's Michael Keaton. No.
I was thinking Harvey Birdman, but okay.
It was a movie literally called Birdman.
True.
He won I think an Oscar for it, if I'm not mistaken.
I haven't seen that one.
Golden Globe, I think. I haven't either, not yet. But I've heard good things from critics and the like. Birdman.
The like.
And the like. Well, yeah, like aesthetically, we haven't really talked about aesthetics yet, but obviously, I mean, maybe it goes without saying, but it's another beautiful entry in Miyazaki's films, and he definitely transports you, which, I mean, he's so good at that, like transporting you into another world, even down to the sound design and the pace, pulls you in, if you're willing to go along for the ride, of course.
Right.
If you're wanting fast-paced action, like
You should just go watch a Michael Bay film.
Yeah, that's definitely good.
Fast-paced and action-packed, and makes your head spin.
Whew. But yeah, this, as are many of his films, he doesn't have a problem with just letting it breathe, you know what I mean, and letting you be there with the character.
I like that.
Takes his time, and I like that as well.
I don't like films that don't let me breathe.
Yeah, definitely. I think many of his films are very contemplative. I think in their pacing, and I like that. It's refreshing. Yeah, and it's not that they don't have their action moments; they certainly do. This one certainly did, but and the tension builds, and I think maybe fair to say as the pacing eventually picks up, but in the early stages, he's not afraid to just take his time, and I like that.
I noticed, this is random, but I noticed that from the wooden practice sword known as a bokken to the actual samurai sword, it looks like Mahito's family line descends from the samurai.
Ooh. That's cool.
The samurai have a family sword that gets passed on from generation to generation. That makes it somewhat made sense to me, anyway, that they could be descended from a samurai lineage.
That's cool. Another little wrinkle there, I guess. Yeah. No, I like that. Well, I think we're going to keep this one fairly short.
Okay.
We're coming up on 40 minutes here, which is shorter than our normal run time. But yeah, it's just getting late, and we don't want to keep ourselves out too late. Get some sleep.
You don't want to go to Waffle House?
Harken back to our single days. Will and I would go to Waffle House like at or after midnight sometimes. Right.
2 a.m., baby.
2 a.m.
2 a.m.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, they have good deals. Like, at least they did back then. And their waffles, of course, are excellent.
Especially at 2 a.m.
Especially at 2 a.m., yeah. You got
really good deals.
You got Waffle House and IHOP are your only two options at that point. And then for a brief period around here, there was also Steak and Shake. Used to be open 24 hours.
Oh, yeah.
The one near here.
They were always good when they got my order right.
Those little what do you call them, smash burgers? Those thin smash burgers. Yeah. Yeah, I was there a couple times. I remember, right around the time, I think it was, this is in my younger days, obviously before I was married, before it gets, I was there, they, when the clubs shut down, it was open 24/7, so, if you're there late enough, 2:30 in the morning, all the bars and clubs close, so then people would come there and eat after clubbing and stuff.
Clubbing, that's one thing I've never done. Of course, there's a lot of things I've never done.
I did it.
You went clubbing?
Yeah, once. Just last year, actually.
Oh, okay.
I was on a 3-day bachelor trip. We went to 2 clubs, and it was an interesting experience. I was one of the oldest people there, I'll tell you that.
I bet.
Yeah. But no, it was just interesting to observe the culture. The first one we went to had a policeman out front who carted you on the way in. He was in full almost full riot gear. He had a bulletproof vest on and everything.
Yeah, that's a good sign.
And then they had a bunch of bouncers inside. So I'm like, damn, what has happened to this place? They had so many bouncers, in the place, in amongst the crowd.
Well, they used to have a.
But it got packed as the night wore on. It got packed, and then most of the people there were under 25. So I'm sitting here over there, this old man. I think I talked about this actually in the very first episode of the Irreverent Nerds podcast, because I think it had just happened.
Full circle.
Yeah, full circle, baby. But yeah, I'm in my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles t-shirt and jeans,
Showing your age.
Sticking out like a sore thumb. Although I did get a compliment on the turtle shirt at one point.
That's so vintage, man. It's cool.
That's retro, man. It's like...
Shut your mouth.
Making me feel old. Shut up, you little bastard. No. Go home to your mommy.
I was cowbunging when you were not even a sprinkle in your mother's eye. Whatever, I lost it. I lost it.
Twinkle. When you weren't even a twinkle in your mother's eye.
I've had too many.
Too many waters. Sprites. By the way, we're in this parking lot, and there's like a weird semi truck. It's like it's got the full size cabin on the front, but then the box on the back is like it's really short. It's like one of the weirdest looking trucks I've ever seen. Yeah, it's like. Dude, I guess he lives in it, but like, yeah, it's definitely not a normal one. Anyway, a side note, you get that for free. There's a picture of that visual image. Yeah. I wanted to call it a midget truck, but I don't know if that's appropriate to use that word anymore.
It's an Oompa Loompa.
It's politically incorrect.
Wonka's out now.
I don't know what the replacement is. Like, little person? I've heard someone say little person, but somehow that doesn't sound any better.
Irreverent Nerds isn't PC.
No, we are
I'm
irreverent.
Kidding.
So.
I'm kidding.
But we try not to be deliberately offensive.
No,
obviously, or at least only up to a point, I suppose.
I don't like to be offensive, but when we chose the name Irreverent Nerds, we implied that we weren't PC, in my opinion. But
yeah, we're not as concerned about being PC all the time, or saying,
or at least we
exactly
say that
the right things. You know what I mean? Like, again, we're not trying to be jerks, and we're not trying to. Like, there's some shows that like
we're mildly irreverent.
They're definitely going for shock value. You know what I mean? Like, and we're not as into that. Like, I'm not like, let's just shock people to get ratings. Or to get views.
Will that work? Let's do it.
It probably would. It's like, let's see how many F words we can fit in one episode.
We should have told Dean on our last episode that we had an M rating on our podcast, so we could just go hog wild. Maybe
we've told him before. I was like,
oh, really?
Maybe he forgot.
Oh, okay.
But
Dean, did we tell him that?
Oh, Dean?
Yeah, on the last episode.
I don't know if we told Dean. I thought you said Dan at first.
No,
Dean.
Like,
I know Dan knows.
No, yeah. Dean can be ranking.
Maybe we didn't tell him.
He can be really colorful on his Facebook account, so I was really surprised that he wasn't during the interview.
Maybe he's more professional in his podcast interviews, which makes sense. You're representing the brand, I guess. Although I suppose you are on Facebook too, but anyway.
Yeah, he's got like family Christmas cards of everybody giving the middle finger.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Which, by the way, guys, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, comic book artist Dean Rankin. Is the right way to say it.
Rankin?
Rankin, apparently.
Yeah.
Oh, Dean Rankin.
I wasn't sure. I forgot to ask him.
Down Under. He's our first international guest, from Down Under, and his work is excexcellent. Like, the more I'm seeing of it, it's like, this is really good.
I mean, there was a reason I followed him throughout all the years.
Like, he was kind of downplaying his skill, but I was like,
oh, he was.
He's good. He's very good. Obviously, he did Simpsons comics. He's a Futurama. He's done, Rick and Morty.
He's still doing Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just announced his latest project. He's doing a Rick and Morty comic.
Nice. No, that's cool, man. Like, so yeah, go give that a listen if you haven't already to that interview. And it's mostly Dean, very little us, which is how we like it with our interviews. We want to give the people that we bring on, the artists, a chance to talk about their work and their process and all of that. And Dean definitely shares with that. We talk a little bit about Australia as well and life down under. So go check it out, mate. Check it out.
I forgot to ask him what kangaroo tastes like. I'm kidding.
Wallaby. You should ask him what wallaby tastes like.
Wallaby.
Wallaby stew.
Don't hurt Rocco.
Oh.
He must protect his modern life.
Oh, yeah. So, I forgot to give my nerd hat rating for this. Let me think. Oh, by the way, we're back on the Boy and the Heron as a topic. I'm going to say 3.75. Like,
okay.
Not quite a 4, but definitely enjoyed it. I don't think... Let's see, what did I say last time we talked? What did I say my top 3 were? So I have Nazca Valley of the Wind, Castle in the Sky... Oh, yeah, and Princess Mononoke. This still doesn't crack my top 3,
no.
but very good. I enjoyed it a lot. Gave some space for contemplation and meditation, almost very meditative, I guess, in a lot of ways. And maybe a little bit of insight into Miyazaki himself as well.
Yeah. And I was going to mention earlier, it's very interesting how we keep going back to World War II in a lot of the Studio Ghibli films.
Yeah, it makes sense. That was he grew up, he was born just prior, I think 1940-ish, like right around there. So, I don't know much he remembers of the war itself, but his earliest years were marked by that, by the war, and of course Japan recovering from it, was his childhood, was living in a Japan that was recovering from the war. Yeah. I know that. How could that not mark you? Even us, a generation or two removed from World War II, I feel like it was hanging very large, looming very large in the culture, even for us. So you can only imagine someone born during that decade, in a country that lost the war, yeah. Anyway, so 3.5 nerd hats from Will, 3.75 from myself. We both recommended it, both enjoy it.
Oh yeah, definitely recommend.
Not Miyazaki. I wouldn't say not Miyazaki's best work, but definitely up to his standards. Very good film. But yeah, I think my top 3 have remained unchanged though. It didn't quite make it in there. His two earliest works are still among his best in my opinion, and then Mononoke a little bit later very much echoes those early works, those first 2, Castle in the Sky and Nausicaa. I think it's one of the reasons why I enjoyed it so much.
Those are my 3 favorite.
Yeah, and that's probably pretty common too, those 3 being the favorite, I would imagine. Well, nerds, well, I don't know if we'll creep in a bonus episode here to get up to 100. We've been talking about that, kind of teasing that.
Oh, this is only 99?
I need to go back and count again. It might be 98. I need to figure that out. It's either 98 or 99, because I may have accidentally counted a bonus episode in there when I was going through the list. So we don't have it straight up numerical order, numerically listed on the because we did seasons instead of just a straight. So yeah, I need to double check that, but we're right around there. But yeah, this is officially the last episode of season 4 of the podcast, because we did set 25 episodes for each season this year. Took a week off in between season 3 and 4, and so yeah, this is officially the end of season 4. I kind of like the idea of coming back at least capping off at 100, so we say we did 100 episodes. Even if we don't continue with this podcast, we'll be we did 100 episodes, and that's pretty darn cool. But yeah, this ends season 4, and on a pretty cool note, I think I'd say. A Miyazaki film's a good way to go out for a season. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Can't do too much better than that, I don't think. So nerds, thanks as always for joining us. And there's not going to be a next week, because even if we were following the same schedule, this would be taking a week off for Christmas. And so even if we were doing a regular season 5 the way we did it this year, we wouldn't pick up until after the first of the year. So we hope you guys have a happy holiday season, Merry Christmas,
Joyful Kwanzaa.
Happy Hanukkah, yeah, Kwanzaa, whole 9 yards. So
A very respectful Ramadan.
and a Happy New Year.
That was a quote from Krusty the Clown.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I've been watching. I've been watching the Simpson Christmas episode still.
Oh, nice. Well, till next time,
Until next time.
live long and prosper.
I almost stole your quote again. Sayonara.
Sayonara. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Irreverent Nerds podcast. If you would, consider following us on Instagram. We are there at irreverent_nerds. You can also hit us up on Facebook. Just look us up there at the Irreverent Nerds. That's our fan page. We have a YouTube channel as well. Once again, the Irreverent Nerds. Nice and simple, right? And if you go to www.irreverentnerds.com, that will send you to our Podcasters for Spotify, formerly Anchor.fm profile, where you can send us a voice message if you want to, you can support us financially, or listen to the podcast. It will also direct you to other places you can listen, like Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, you name it. So, like, comment, subscribe, follow, all those good things. Wherever you find us, wherever you listen to us, we would greatly appreciate it. Until next time, nerds, live long and prosper. Avengers assemble! I'm Batman.